Arizona Territory, 1884. Nathan York squinted against the relentless summer sun as he guided his horse across the parched landscape of Promise Valley. At 25, his shoulders already carried the weight of a lifetime on the frontier, responsibilities that had calcified his belief that men like him weren't meant for softness. The harsh territory had taught him early that attachment was just a prelude to loss. A man needs nothing but his horse, his gun, and enough sense to keep moving, he muttered to himself, a mantra inherited from his father before the Apache raid that left him orphaned at 14. The 6-year-old boy riding double with him shifted uncomfortably. "Pa, how much longer?" Tommy's small voice broke through Nathan's reverie. "Not far now, son." Nathan adjusted his Stetson, its brim weathered from years under the Arizona sun. Though clean-shaven today, a rare concession to civilization, and still youthful with clear blue eyes that belied his hard existence, Nathan carried himself like a man twice his age. His lean frame spoke of a life lived between meal times, of constant vigilance. Tommy was the one exception to Nathan's rule of solitude, the unexpected consequence of a brief connection with a young widow passing through on a wagon train 3 years back. She died of fever 2 days after childbirth, leaving Nathan with an infant and the crushing confirmation that loving anything in this territory was a fool's gambit. They were headed to Redemption, the nearest semblance of a town, for supplies and to deliver a package from the railroad outpost where Nathan occasionally worked as a scout. The settlement had grown since his last visit, now boasting both a church and a schoolhouse alongside its saloon and general store. "Remember what I told you," Nathan instructed as they approached the dusty main street. "Stay close. Don't wander." "Yes, sir," Tommy replied, his small fingers clutching his father's weathered leather vest. What Nathan wanted was simple: get supplies, deliver the package, and return to their isolated cabin before sunset. What he refused to acknowledge needing was connection, something to fill the hollow spaces between him and his son that grew wider with each passing season. The town bustled with unusual activity. Colorful bunting decorated the newly whitewashed church, and women in their Sunday best gathered on the steps despite it being a Thursday. "What's happening?" Tommy asked, eyes wide at the spectacle. "Wedding day, I reckon," Nathan replied disinterestedly, dismounting and lifting his son down. "Come on, general store first." As they crossed the street, a flash of pale blue caught Nathan's eye. A woman hurrying behind the church, her skirts gathered in trembling hands. Something in her posture, a defeated slope to her shoulders, made Nathan pause despite himself. Inside Jacobson's general store, Tommy gaped at the candy jars while Nathan handed over his list to the proprietor. "Flour's gone up since you were last here," Jacobson commented, gathering the items. "Railroad's bringing progress, but it ain't bringing cheaper prices." Nathan nodded grimly. "Need to post this too." He placed the sealed package on the counter. "That for the Eastern Star Mining Company? Been expecting it." Jacobson eyed Nathan curiously. "Staying for the wedding?" "Whole town's turned out. The schoolteacher's marrying that cattle baron from up north. Ellsworth's his name. Older fellow, but richer than sin." Nathan grunted noncommittally, his mind inexplicably returning to the woman in blue he'd glimpsed. "Pa, can I have a candy stick?" Tommy tugged at his sleeve. "Just one." Nathan placed a coin on the counter, watching his son's face light up with simple joy, a lightness Nathan himself couldn't remember feeling. Their errands complete, they stepped back onto the boardwalk when commotion erupted near the church. A woman's voice, high with distress, carried down the street. I simply cannot go through with this." Nathan instinctively placed a protective hand on Tommy's shoulder, preparing to steer them away from the drama, when he recognized the voice's owner. The woman in blue, now standing on the church steps, tears streaming down her face. She was young, perhaps 20, with honey blonde hair escaping an elaborate coiffure. Her wedding dress, a modest creation of pale blue satin and lace, trembled with her body as she backed away from an imposing gray-haired man who reached for her arm. "Lucinda," the man growled, loud enough for half the street to hear, "you will not embarrass me this way." "Mr. Ellsworth, please," she implored. "I tried to tell you yesterday." Nathan should have kept walking. The affairs of townspeople were none of his concern. But something, perhaps the naked fear in the young woman's eyes, made him hesitate just long enough for the inevitable to happen. Tommy broke free from his grasp and darted into the street, pointing at the crying bride. "That's my mama," he shouted with all the certainty a 6-year-old could muster. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He froze, one boot on the boardwalk, one in the dirt, as every head turned toward them. The bride, Lucinda, stared at Tommy with wide, startled eyes the color of summer sage. "Tommy," Nathan hissed, recovering enough to reach for his son. But the damage was done. The crowd parted, murmurs rippling through the onlookers as the gray-haired groom stalked down the steps toward them, his face flushed with fury. "What nonsense is this?" he demanded, looking from Tommy to Nathan with narrowed eyes. Nathan finally moved, pulling Tommy behind him protectively. "My apologies. The boy is confused. We'll be on our way." But Tommy peeked around his father's legs, still pointing. "She looks just like the picture, Pa. The one you keep in your Bible." A collective gasp rose from the townspeople. Nathan felt heat crawling up his neck, mortification warring with the urgent need to extract themselves from this situation. "I believe," the bride said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension as she descended the steps, "that I know what's happening here." Her eyes never left Nathan's face, studying him with bewildering intensity. "Is your name Nathan York?" she asked quietly when she reached them. The world seemed to still around him. "How do you know my name?" "Because," she said, drawing a shaky breath, "I think you might have known my sister, Lillian Evans." The name crashed through Nathan's defenses like a thunderbolt. Lillian, Tommy's mother, the woman whose death had sealed Nathan's conviction that love was too dangerous a prospect in this unforgiving land. "Lillian never mentioned a sister," he managed, throat dry. "We were separated when our parents died. I was sent east to relatives. I've been searching for her since I came of age." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "When I arrived here last year and took the teaching position, I had no idea she'd passed through." The groom, Ellsworth, grabbed Lucinda's arm. "What is the meaning of this spectacle, Lucinda? Are you acquainted with this drifter?" She pulled away with surprising strength. "I've never met this man before, Conrad, but I believe he knew my sister. And if that child is her son—" Her voice broke as she looked at Tommy. "Then he is my nephew." The revelation stunned the crowd into silence. Nathan felt the ground shifting beneath him, old certainties crumbling. "The wedding is off," Lucinda announced, turning to face her intended. "I tried to tell you yesterday that I couldn't go through with it. This is a sign I was right." Ellsworth's face purpled. "You cannot humiliate me this way. We had an agreement." "An agreement made under duress is no agreement at all," she replied, her voice steadying. "You know very well my acceptance of your proposal came only after you threatened to have the school board dismiss me." Gasps and mutters spread through the crowd. Nathan's hand instinctively moved to where his gun would normally rest, but he'd left it on his saddle, unwilling to bring weapons into town with Tommy present. "You will regret this," Ellsworth snarled, then stormed off toward the saloon, followed by several men Nathan assumed were his ranch hands. The pastor approached, looking thoroughly distressed. "Perhaps we should all step inside and discuss this privately." An hour later, seated in the church's small anteroom with Tommy playing outside under the watchful eye of the pastor's wife, Nathan struggled to process Lucinda's story. "After our parents died in the Chicago fire of '71, I was 12, Lillian 15. Our mother's sister took me in, but claimed she couldn't afford both of us. Lillian was sent to work as a domestic." Lucinda twisted a handkerchief between slender fingers. "I lost track of her after my aunt died 4 years ago. I've been searching ever since." "She never spoke of family," Nathan said, still wary despite the undeniable resemblance between the sisters, the same eyes, the same graceful hands. "She joined our wagon train in Kansas City, widowed and alone." "That sounds like Lillian. She was always independent." What was she like at the end?" Lucinda's voice wavered. Something in Nathan cracked open. For 3 years, he'd carried Lillian's final days alone, never speaking of them to anyone. "Brave," he finally said. "She knew she was dying, but she just kept looking at Tommy and smiling. Made me promise to tell him about her." He swallowed hard. "I haven't done a very good job of that." Lucinda reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of his. "But you kept her picture. You've raised her son. Not well enough." The admission cost him. "I don't know how to talk to him about things that matter." "You've kept him alive in this territory. That's something." She hesitated. May I meet him properly?" not as a spectacle in the street, but as his aunt. The request was reasonable, yet it terrified Nathan. Allowing Lucinda into Tommy's life meant complication, attachment, the possibility of more loss. But denying Tommy knowledge of his mother's family seemed a cruelty he couldn't justify. Yes, he conceded, but I should warn you about Ellsworth. He's not a man who takes humiliation lightly. I'm aware, she replied grimly. He owns half the valley and has the town council in his pocket. By sundown, I expect I'll be informed I'm no longer welcome to teach here. Nathan studied her, this unexpected connection to his past. You gave up security for a chance to know Tommy? I gave up a loveless marriage to a man 30 years my senior who collects people like properties, she corrected. Meeting Tommy is a blessing I never anticipated. She smiled sadly. Though now I must determine what comes next. Before Nathan could respond, the door burst open. The pastor hurried in, face ashen. Miss Evans, Mr. York, Ellsworth's men are outside. They're saying you have until sundown to leave town. Nathan tensed. On what grounds? He's claiming you disrupted a legal proceeding and that Miss Evans has stolen property belonging to him. The wedding dress and gifts. Lucinda blanched. That's absurd. The dress was made from fabric I purchased with my teaching wages. Doesn't matter. He's got the sheriff in his pocket, the pastor replied. I've seen this before. It won't end well if you stay. Nathan stood, years of frontier survival instinct kicking in. We need to go? Now. But where? Lucinda asked, rising as well. For the first time in years, Nathan made a decision not based solely on survival, but on something dangerously close to hope. My cabin. It's remote enough to give us time to figure out our next move. The pastor nodded approval. I'll help create a diversion. There's a back way through the cemetery. Within the hour, they were riding out of Redemption, Nathan and Tommy on his gelding, Lucinda on a borrowed mare, her wedding dress hastily exchanged for a simpler skirt and shirtwaist. Have you ridden before? Nathan asked as they pushed north, away from town. I grew up riding, she replied, handling the horse with unexpected confidence. Though not astride like this. She adjusted her position, seemingly unconcerned with the impropriety of riding like a man. Tommy watched his newly discovered aunt with undisguised fascination. Are you really my mama's sister? I am, Lucinda affirmed, her expression softening. Your mother was the bravest, kindest person I ever knew. Pa doesn't talk about her much. Nathan winced at the simple truth. The boy deserved better. Then I shall have to tell you all about her, Lucinda promised. Like how she once rescued a whole litter of kittens during a thunderstorm, or how she could bake the most delicious apple tarts you've ever tasted. Tommy's eyes widened. Really? Really? And you have her eyes, you know. Exactly the same shade. Nathan listened, a strange feeling expanding in his chest. These were stories he should have shared with Tommy, memories he'd locked away because they hurt too much. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Nathan spotted dust on the trail behind them. Riders, he warned. At least 4. Ellsworth's men. Lucinda asked, fear edging her voice. Likely. We need to move faster. He scanned the terrain. There's a cut through those rocks. It's narrow. They'll have to come through single file if they follow. They urged their horses forward, reaching the rocky passage just as the distant riders came clearly into view. Nathan helped Lucinda and Tommy dismount. Stay with your aunt, he instructed Tommy, then turned to Lucinda. There's a hollow about 50 yards in. Wait there. What are you going to do? She asked, clutching Tommy's hand. Buy us time. He retrieved his Winchester from its saddle scabbard. You can't shoot them. I'm not planning to. He managed a grim smile. Just going to discourage them from following too closely. Lucinda hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. Nathan watched them disappear into the rocks, then positioned himself behind an outcropping with a clear view of the approach. The riders were closing fast. He recognized 2 of Ellsworth's ranch hands among them. When they reached the mouth of the passage, Nathan fired a warning shot that kicked up dust in front of their horses. That's far enough, he called. The riders pulled up short, hands hovering near their weapons. York, the lead rider shouted. Ellsworth wants a word with his bride. She's not his bride, Nathan replied evenly. And she's not interested in talking. Don't be a fool, York. Ellsworth owns this valley. You can't hide forever. Not looking to hide. Just looking for you all to turn around and ride back to town. The standoff stretched, tension crackling in the air. Then the lead rider made a subtle motion, and one of the men to his left drew iron. Nathan fired again, sending the man's hat flying off his head. Next one won't miss. Go back and tell Ellsworth if he wants to discuss this. He can come himself, unarmed and alone. The lead rider spat in the dirt. This ain't over, York. Never thought it was. The riders conferred briefly, then wheeled their horses around, casting dark glances over their shoulders as they retreated. Nathan waited until they were well away before hurrying to find Lucinda and Tommy. They were huddled together in the hollow, Tommy clinging to his aunt while she whispered reassurances. They're gone, Nathan announced. For now. Will they come back? Tommy asked, his small face pinched with worry. Not tonight, I think. Nathan ruffled his son's hair. We should keep moving, though. They rode until darkness made travel dangerous, then made camp in a protected ravine. As Tommy slept, wrapped in Nathan's coat near the small fire, Lucinda and Nathan sat in uneasy silence. I've disrupted your lives, she finally said. I'm sorry for that. Nathan prodded the embers with a stick. Your family. Tommy deserves to know his family. And what about you? What do you deserve, Mr. York? The question caught him off guard. No one had asked him such a thing in years. Doesn't matter what I deserve. Only matters that Tommy's safe. She studied him across the firelight. You believe that, don't you? That your own happiness is irrelevant. Happiness is a luxury out here, he replied. Survival comes first. Is survival enough? She pressed. Is that all you want for Tommy, to survive? The word struck a nerve. Of course not. I want him to have more. To know more than just staying alive. Then perhaps you should want the same for yourself. Nathan looked away, uncomfortable with her insight. You should rest. We have a long ride tomorrow. They reached Nathan's cabin by midday, a sturdy, if sparse, structure nestled against a ridge, with a small corral for horses and a vegetable garden that had seen better days. It's not much, he apologized as he helped Lucinda down from her horse. It's a home, she replied simply. That's what matters. Tommy proudly showed his aunt around. From the stone fireplace Nathan had built himself to the small room partitioned off as Tommy's sleeping area. Pa carved me this horse, he said, showing her a surprisingly detailed wooden toy. And these are my ma's things. He pointed to a small trunk at the foot of his bed. Nathan watched from the doorway, ashamed he'd never properly unpacked Lillian's few possessions for Tommy. Instead, they'd remained locked away, like his own emotions. Perhaps, Lucinda suggested gently, we could look through these together. I'd love to see what my sister kept with her. The three of them sat on the cabin floor that evening, the contents of Lillian's trunk spread before them. A faded calico dress, a silver hairbrush with strands of honey blonde hair still caught in the bristles, a small, leather-bound journal. I never read it, Nathan admitted. Felt too private. Lucinda opened it carefully. Oh, Nathan, she breathed after scanning a few pages. She wrote about you. Nathan stiffened. What does it say? Lucinda read aloud. April 12th, 1878. Nathan York joined our wagon train today, hired as a scout. He doesn't speak much, but his eyes see everything. There's a gentleness in him he tries to hide. I wonder what hardship taught him to bury his true nature so deeply. Tommy listened wide-eyed as his aunt continued reading entries that traced Lillian's growing affection for Nathan, her joy at discovering her pregnancy, and her fears about bringing a child into the frontier. I worry for Nathan. Lucinda read from one of the final entries. He keeps the world at arm's length, as if expecting it all to be ripped away. If I don't survive this birth, I fear he'll withdraw completely. My only hope is that our child might keep open the door to his heart. Nathan stood abruptly and walked outside. The night air cooled the heat in his face, but did nothing for the ache in his chest. Lillian had seen right through him, had recognized his fear of attachment even as she'd breached his defenses. And what had he done with her hope? Raised Tommy at arm's length, providing food and shelter, but withholding the emotional connection the boy deserved. Lucinda found him leaning against the corral fence, staring at the stars. I'm sorry, she said softly. I shouldn't have read that aloud. No, he replied. I needed to hear it. He turned to face her. I haven't done right by Tommy. Or by Lillian's memory. You've kept him alive in dangerous territory. That counts for something. It's not enough, though, is it? He gazed toward the cabin where Tommy was sleeping. She wanted more for him. More than just survival. Lucinda stepped closer. It's not too late, Nathan. The next morning brought unwelcome news. A rider from a neighboring homestead stopped by, warning that Ellsworth had put out word he was looking for Nathan and Lucinda, offering a reward for information on their whereabouts. "Man's determined," the neighbor said. "Claims you stole something valuable of his." "His pride, maybe," Nathan muttered. "Nothing else." After the neighbor left, Lucinda paced the small cabin. "We can't stay here. I've put you both in danger." "We're safer together," Nathan insisted. "This cabin is defensible, and I know this territory better than Ellsworth's men." "For how long, though? A week? A month? Eventually, they'll find us." She stopped pacing, her expression resolute. "I should go? Draw them away from you and Tommy?" "Absolutely not." The vehemence in Nathan's voice surprised even him. "We're not separating." Their eyes met, an unspoken current passing between them. In just 2 days, Lucinda had breached walls Nathan had spent years fortifying. Her presence filled the cabin with something it had lacked, a warmth that went beyond the physical. "Then what do we do?" she asked. Before he could answer, hoofbeats approached. Nathan grabbed his rifle and motioned for Lucinda to stay back with Tommy. Through the window, he saw a single rider approaching, the pastor from Redemption, his horse lathered from hard riding. "York," he called. "I bring news." Nathan cautiously opened the door, rifle still ready. "What's happened?" The pastor dismounted wearily. "Ellsworth's had a stroke. Found him collapsed in his study this morning." Lucinda appeared in the doorway behind Nathan. "Is he?" "Alive, but barely. Doctor says he might never speak again." The pastor removed his hat. "Before I left, his lawyer arrived from Tucson. Apparently, Ellsworth has a son from a previous marriage, the real heir to his fortune. All his threats about owning the valley were just bluster." The news was still sinking in when the pastor added, "The town council asked me to tell Miss Evans her teaching position remains open, if she wishes to return." That evening, after Tommy was asleep and the pastor bedded down in the barn, Nathan and Lucinda sat on the porch steps, the immensity of the starlit sky above them. "So," Nathan said carefully, "you'll be going back to Redemption." Lucinda nodded. "The school term starts in 3 weeks." A familiar hollowness opened in Nathan's chest, the anticipation of another goodbye, another person walking out of his life. But this time, the feeling was sharper, more acute. "Tommy will miss you," he said. "I'll miss him too." She hesitated. "Nathan, I've been thinking. Redemption is only half a day's ride. Tommy could. He could come stay with me during the school year. Get a proper education." The suggestion hit him like a physical blow. "You want to take him?" "Not take him," she corrected gently. "Share him. He would still be your son, but he could also be my student. My nephew. You could visit whenever you wished, and he would return to you during school holidays." Nathan stared out at the darkened landscape, the territory he'd chosen precisely for its isolation. "I don't know if I can do that. Be apart from him. Then perhaps." Lucinda took a deep breath. "Perhaps you could come too." "To Redemption? What would I do there?" "The railroad is expanding. They need men who know the territory. Or the livery is looking for someone who understands horses. There are possibilities, Nathan." He scoffed. "I'm not a town man. Aren't you tired of being alone?" The directness of her question startled him. "Because I am. I've been searching for my sister, for connection, for years. And now I've found Tommy, and you." Her hand found his in the darkness, her touch sending an unexpected current through him. "You don't have to decide tonight. Just think about it." 2 weeks later, Nathan stood in Redemption's newly constructed train station, watching workers unload supplies from the eastbound train. Beside him, Lucinda reviewed the manifest, her neat handwriting recording each delivery. "The school books are here," she said, smiling up at him. "Just in time for the new term." Nathan nodded, still adjusting to town life. The station master's job had come unexpectedly, a position that valued his knowledge of the territory and his ability to organize supply shipments to outlying settlements. They walked together toward the schoolhouse, where Tommy was helping the older boys clean the yard in preparation for classes. "Huh," he called, dropping his rake and running to meet them. "Miss Wilson says I can ring the bell on the first day." "That's quite an honor," Nathan replied, smiling at his son's excitement. "Miss Wilson?" he asked Lucinda quietly as Tommy ran back to his tasks. It seemed less confusing than having him call me Aunt Lucinda in school and Miss Evans in front of the other children. Nathan nodded, understanding her logic. though the formality of it still struck him as strange given how quickly she'd become a central part of their lives. Their new routine had developed organically. Nathan at the station during the day, Tommy at school, and Lucinda teaching. In the evenings, they shared meals in the small house she rented near the school, with Nathan and Tommy returning to their rooms above the station to sleep. It was an arrangement that worked, but lately, Nathan had been questioning whether it was enough. "I received a letter from my cousin in San Francisco," Lucinda said as they walked. "She's invited me to visit during the Christmas holiday. Will you go?" The thought of her leaving, even temporarily, created an unexpected knot in his stomach. "I'd like to, but—" She hesitated. "I wouldn't want to leave you and Tommy. We could manage." "I know you could. That's not what I meant." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Nathan, these past weeks have been the happiest I can remember. Being with you and Tommy feels right in a way nothing else has." The September sun caught in her honey blonde hair, and Nathan was struck by how beautiful she was, not just in appearance, but in spirit. Where Lillian had been impulsive and bold, Lucinda was thoughtful and steady, yet they shared the same fundamental kindness. "I feel it too," he admitted, "but I'm not sure what to do about it." She smiled sadly. "Neither am I. I care deeply for Tommy, and for you. But I'm not Lillian." "I know that," he said quickly. "I'm not looking for a replacement for her." "Aren't you, though?" "At least a little." There was no accusation in her voice, only gentle inquiry. "It's natural, Nathan. She was Tommy's mother. Your first love." "Not my first," he corrected, the admission surprising them both. "There was someone before, back in Kansas. She died in a flash flood. After that, I decided caring for people was too dangerous." He met Lucinda's gaze directly. "Lillian changed that, briefly. Then when she died too, it just confirmed what I already believed. That loving someone means losing them." Lucinda finished softly. "Yes. And now? Do you still believe that?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Before he could answer, a commotion erupted from the direction of the saloon. Shouting, then the unmistakable crack of gunfire. Nathan reacted instantly, pushing Lucinda toward the schoolyard. "Get inside with Tommy." He ran toward the disturbance, rounding the corner to find a familiar sight, one of Ellsworth's former ranch hands, drunk and waving a pistol. "Where's that schoolteacher?" The man slurred. "Got unfinished business with her, and that drifter York." The sheriff approached cautiously, hands raised. "Put the gun down, Harlan. Ellsworth is gone. Whatever grudge you're carrying is pointless now." "Not pointless to me." Harlan fired wildly into the air. "That woman humiliated the boss. Cost me my job when he took ill." Nathan stepped forward, making himself visible. "I'm here, Harlan. Whatever problem you have, it's with me, not Miss Evans." Harlan swung the pistol toward him, eyes bloodshot. "York, been looking for you." "Well, you found me." Nathan kept his voice level, hands where Harlan could see them. "Why don't we talk about this without the gun?" "Nothing to talk about. You and that woman destroyed everything." "Ellsworth destroyed himself," Nathan countered. "And you're about to do the same if you don't put that weapon down." For a moment, it seemed Harlan might comply. His gun hand wavered. Then his face twisted with renewed rage. "Too late for talk." He fired just as Nathan dove to one side. The bullet grazed his arm, tearing through his sleeve and burning a path across his bicep. Nathan rolled behind a water trough as Harlan fired again. The sheriff returned fire, catching Harlan in the shoulder. The drunk man staggered, then fell to his knees, his pistol clattering to the dirt. "Nathan!" Lucinda's voice cut through the chaos. She ran toward him, ignoring his earlier instruction to stay hidden. "I'm all right," he said as she reached him, though blood seeped through his torn sleeve. "You're shot." She examined his arm, face pale with fear. "Just a graze." He looked over her shoulder to where Tommy stood frozen at the edge of the street, eyes wide with terror. "Tommy, go back to the schoolyard. Now." The boy didn't move, transfixed by the sight of his father's blood. Lucinda followed Nathan's gaze. "Tommy, sweetheart, your father is fine. Just a small cut. Go back now, please." Finally, Tommy turned and ran back toward the school. As the sheriff dragged Harlan away and curious onlookers dispersed, Lucinda helped Nathan to the doctor's office. "You shouldn't have come running into the street," he chided as the doctor cleaned his wound. "It was dangerous," says the man who just confronted an armed drunk. She retorted, but her hands trembled as she held his hat. The doctor finished bandaging Nathan's arm. Keep it clean, rest it for a few days, and you'll be fine. You're lucky it was just a graze. Later that evening, after reassuring a still-shaken Tommy and settling him in bed at the station, Nathan walked Lucinda home through the quiet streets. You could have been killed, she said softly as they reached her door. But I wasn't. This time. She looked up at him, moonlight silvering her features. Nathan, this is what I feared most when I first started caring for you both. That I would lose you just when I'd found you. The vulnerability in her voice pierced him. For 3 years, he'd lived by the principle that caring meant inevitable pain, that the only safety lay in isolation. Yet standing here with Lucinda, the truth he'd been fighting became undeniable. He was already past the point of no return. If something happened to her now, the pain would be no less than if he fully embraced his feelings. I've been a fool, he said quietly. What do you mean? I thought if I kept everyone at a distance, I'd be safe from loss. But that's not how it works, is it? Tommy loves you. He faltered, then gathered his courage. I care for you too. Deeply. And that happened whether I wanted it to or not. Hope flickered in her eyes. So what now? Now I stop pretending I can control what I feel. He took her hand. Lucinda, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm tired of living half a life out of fear. As am I, she whispered. He leaned down, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt like coming home, gentle at first, then deepening with shared longing. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Nathan pressed his forehead to hers. I don't want to say goodnight, he admitted. Then don't. She squeezed his hand. Come inside. We'll talk. They sat before her small fireplace, speaking late into the night about their pasts, their fears, and their hopes. About Tommy, and what kind of life they wanted for him. About Lillian, and how her brief presence had changed both their lives. I think she would approve, you know, Lucinda said as the fire burned down to embers. Of us, together. I think so too, Nathan agreed, surprising himself with how right it felt to say it aloud. In the months that followed, their lives gradually intertwined. Nathan continued working at the station while helping build an addition to Lucinda's house. Tommy thrived in school, proudly bringing home his accomplishments to show both his father and the woman he now simply called Aunt Lou. By Christmas, Nathan had sold his remote cabin, using the proceeds to purchase a small lot near the edge of town where they could keep horses. The isolation he'd once craved now felt hollow compared to the fullness of their shared life. On a crisp April morning in 1885, nearly a year after Lucinda's aborted wedding, the church in Redemption was once again decorated with bunting and flowers. This time, there were no tears on the bride's face, only radiant joy as she walked down the aisle in a simple dress of ivory silk, carrying wildflowers gathered that morning by her nephew. Nathan waited at the altar, clean-shaven and dressed in a new suit that still felt stiff and unfamiliar, but the discomfort faded when he saw Lucinda approaching. Beside him, Tommy fidgeted with the small cushion holding their rings, his face solemn with the importance of his role. Who gives this woman in marriage? The pastor asked. Tommy stepped forward importantly. I do, along with my mama, who's in heaven. A ripple of affectionate laughter moved through the congregation. Nathan knelt to Tommy's level. Thank you, son, he said softly, his throat tight with emotion. As Lucinda reached them, Tommy suddenly pointed at her, his face breaking into a wide grin. That's my new mama, he announced to everyone's delight. Nathan felt the last of his defenses crumble completely. This was his family, unexpected, imperfect, and infinitely precious. When he and Lucinda spoke their vows, the words felt less like promises and more like acknowledgments of what already existed between them. A love forged through shared hardship and unexpected joy, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the pastor declared. You may kiss your bride. As Nathan drew Lucinda into his arms, he marveled at how completely his life had transformed. The man who once believed the frontier was no place for love now understood that love was precisely what made the frontier, and life itself, worthwhile. Later that evening, as Lucinda danced with Tommy while neighbors clapped in rhythm, Nathan watched his new family with a fullness in his heart he'd once thought impossible. The frontier remained harsh and unforgiving, but he no longer faced it alone. Together, they had built something neither time nor tragedy could diminish. a family bound not just by blood or circumstance, but by choice, by forgiveness, and by the courage to love despite all fear of loss. In finding each other, they had found home.